And I'm just, oh, good, we're being recorded. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. I've been looking forward to it, and I was particularly interested in this subject, about everyone benefits from boundaries. And one of the things that I've noticed is that many times if you start talking about reentry or working with justice-involved people or going into the jails or prisons, somebody will say, oh, you better have good boundaries. Stop. That's not where we begin. We want to begin talking about boundaries because we are humans. We are people. Everybody benefits from boundaries wherever we are, whatever we happen to be doing, because boundaries clarify all of our relationships. So we don't bring up boundaries just because we're working with this particular population, but we need to think about boundaries because they benefit everybody and help us understand who we are, what we're about. So what I'd like to do today is first talk about a few principles about boundaries. Then we'll go into a whole bunch of stories and examples. So to begin with, what are boundaries? Well, they define responsibilities. So a fence between two properties, lets you know who cuts what grass, who takes care of it, who owns this. So it defines that. Boundaries also provide protection. If it's cold outside, maybe you need a jacket. If it's raining, that's a protection. Painted stripes on the highway are a boundary. As I was driving on the highway yesterday, there's a huge truck, one of these overly wide loads with all the flashing lights, and I'm zipping by in my little car. Why do I feel safe? I feel safe because I have painted lines between me and that truck. Well, the paint doesn't protect me. It just defines each of our lanes. That's a boundary. It's protection. If you think about it, a job description is a boundary. It defines who's responsible for what. It defines what you do, why they pay you. So for example, if the boss were to say, hey, why don't you come over this weekend and clean out the garage? Not my job, not what I do. Boundaries define things. They define our relationships. They define who we are to each other. What's our role? What's our relationship? What's our personal space? I mentioned my family and I living in Brazil for many years. And in learning the Portuguese language, learning about Brazilian culture, we also have to learn about personal space. How people express themselves, how they show recognition and warmth and connection. And the whole sense of personal space is different. But there's clarity. Everybody understands that. Boundaries define me and not me. Oftentimes parents, talk about their babies going through the terrible twos. Terrible twos where, babies are always saying no. That's basically, they're learning boundaries. They're learning that they're not the same as mom. They're beginning to define themselves. And frankly, all of parenting is a boundary definition. Think about it this way. As a parent, you begin as being 100% responsible for this little tiny human. And by the time they're 18 or 20, they are now responsible for themselves. Parenting is the long drawn out process of transferring that responsibility to that person. Frankly, most parenting conflicts and challenges are disagreements about how quickly we turn that over. So responsibility.
Okay. So we wanted to talk a little bit about 2 and 4. So the difference between being responsible to someone, being responsible for someone. And so we just wanted to open that up to you guys and talk about kind of what do you think the difference between being responsible to someone is versus being responsible for someone?
Good. We'll give a moment, see if some comments show up in the chat. But these are important differences. Two, we might be responsible to a boss, to accomplish a certain task at work. But are we responsible for the boss? No. So there's a difference there to the task, to the job, whatever, but not for.
And if anybody has any examples, okay, so we got one. Sandy says, I learned early that I was not responsible for my young children.
Okay. Because ultimately they are their own unique individuals. We take care of them, but we're training, preparing, equipping them to grow up and be independent, capable people. So that's if you start looking for boundaries, you will see them all over the place. And that's an important thing to consider.
Another one too.
Oh, yes.
To someone doing our duty, do our parts to help others and support others. So.
All right, good. Thank you. Yeah. So the 2 and 4 thing is one of those things that gets confused, but just to highlight, when we talk about boundaries, clarity is your friend, confusion is the enemy. If that's the only thing you write down or remember from today, that would be part of it. Clarity is your friend. Clarity in relationships, confusion is the enemy that we're trying to avoid. When we work with people, who have been involved in the justice system, we often run into people who've experienced all sorts of trauma, all sorts of different issues.
So we wanted to open it back up again in the chat and see if you guys had any examples or thoughts about how trauma affects this relationship.
As we're we'll give a moment for any options in the chat. But trauma distorts relationships. It brings all sorts of confusion, and many of the people that we serve in the criminal justice system have both been boundary invaders, but they've also had their personal space invaded. And so all sorts of broken boundary issues. And so let me just say that people who've had their boundaries violated need a lot of extra clarity from us about who we are, what we're about, what's going on, what our role is. So we want to be very trauma aware because a lot of people have experienced a lot of difficult things. For me, I work with both male and female people involved in the criminal justice system. Occasionally, I have met women who have not experienced trauma, but the vast majority have. I'm seeing the comment from Nick, trauma causes hidden or repressed issues. Yes, absolutely. And that pain is often a big part of the reason why so many people go to substance abuse as a pain relief issue. And so just say no will not relieve that pain. That's where trauma counseling and other supports that we can provide help with that. So we are not surprised by hidden or repressed issues. So thanks for that. So again, boundaries provide clarity and avoid confusion. Clarity is good, confusion is bad. So we need walls where we need walls, and we need gates where we need gates to be able to allow people to come in, to receive input from one another, to have connection. And specific situations require different sorts of boundaries. Think about the surgeon. Before they go in to operate on you, they've got masks and gloves and gowns and all kinds of stuff. That's how they keep you healthy and safe and infection-free. But then when you talk to them afterwards, they take all that stuff off because it's no longer needed. Different times, different situations require different levels of boundaries and communication. Oh, there's a great quote. Boundaries allow me to love and respect others and myself simultaneously. I love it. Yes. Let me stay with that just a second. To love myself and respect others both at the same time. Yes, I was speaking recently with somebody who was about to be released. And they had had a long struggle with addiction issues. And they made the comment, it's time for me to get selfish. It's like, hold on, I think what you mean is self-care. The previous life in addiction, that was selfish. Self-care is you take good care of you. You are a person worth taking care of. And as you take care of you, you're in a better place to be able to connect with others. So not selfish, but self-care. So one thing that I would really want to highlight today is we want to define our role with the people that we're serving, we're working with. If you are professional, what is your professional role? What's your scope of practice? What are you providing? If you are a volunteer, communicate that, clarify that. I find when I'm working with people in the jail or prison, they are accustomed to case managers in those systems, but they may not see them very often. And so frequently I have to define my role. And the way I do it is a story. It's a little stupid. I'll just warn you in advance. It's a little stupid, but it's the best I got. So if anybody's got a better story, help me out here. But in the meantime, here's what I say to everybody the first time I meet them to try and explain my role. I say, look, I've got a story. It's stupid. Here it is. If you've got a car and it's broken, you take it to a mechanic and they fix it. You don't even have to know what's wrong with it. You just take it in and they fix it. Well, guess what? You're not a car. I'm not a mechanic. I can't fix you. I mean, to me, even the idea of that is kind of disrespectful and kind of weird, and I don't get that. On the other hand, if somebody wanted to be an athlete, they could join a team, get a coach. Coach would come up with a workout plan, a training routine, encourage them, challenge them, push them. But who's the one running and working and sweating? Well, in this story, that would be the person. So you're the athlete, I'm the coach. That means I view my role more like a coach than a mechanic. And I try and explain this the first time I meet people, just to clarify what our roles are, who's doing what, reduce entitlement, all of those sorts of things. Everybody benefits from clarity, from formerly incarcerated people to everybody we run into. So this is important. I know, Nick, you might be able to correct me on this, but I've heard a number of people in the DRC system talk about how 60 to 80% of the people incarcerated have had substance use issues. And my experience has been that that's true. It's as a ballpark figure. I've done ongoing programming at Pickaway, at CRC, at Marion, at North Central, and at ORW. I have visited every prison in Ohio except Toledo, so one day I need to get there. But my observation is that maybe 60 to 80% have substance use issues, but almost 100% have had relationship issues, broken relationships, broken boundaries, broken other people's boundaries, all sorts of things. So I would just challenge each person to think about, what is my role? What do I bring? What am I offering? And bring clarity to the person or the group or the people that you're seeing, that you're working with. Bring that clarity, who you work for, what you're doing, what you provide. If you just say, I'm here to help, well, somebody's going to say, well, great, I need a pickup truck. And that isn't what you're promising. So bring that clarity. So define your role. Also, everyone in the jail or a prison has a particular role or title. Oh, yes, Hope Letters. You're in the Hope Letters program and you offer hope. Yes. Thank you for bringing up hope. I'm so with you on that. And personally, I believe without hope, nobody changes. So probably the most significant thing we can bring is hope. Hope that people can change. Hope that a new life is possible. And so, yes to hope. Thank you for that note.
I have an example of clarity too.
Please.
I just wanted to share a personal example I had too, of just kind of being able to define what is my role and sticking to the boundaries within that role. Over the past year, I've been mentoring a girl who is aging out of the foster care system. And so that, I mean, it is a really difficult transition where somebody's going from having caseworkers and social workers and all these people in their life that are really they're making suggestions, they're taking new appointments, and then you turn 18 and all of a sudden it's on you to make these decisions. It's on you to call people back. It's on you to find a ride. And at that point I was her mentor. And so I had signed up to meet with her weekly, help her, not necessarily with these practical things in her life, but help her with some of these more just emotional things, or just be a light support. And then what ended up happening as she aged out of the system was she was calling me, asking for bus money, asking how to get a birth certificate, asking, she had become pregnant at this point. So figuring out, how do you get into the SNAP program? How do you get WIC? All these things. And because I work at the health district, I do have a lot of knowledge about these things, working with people who are WIC consultants. And so at first I was like, yes, I need to help you. I need to figure all these things out for you. You're coming from a deficit here. I need to be the one that kind of fills these gaps in your life. And it became really draining on me personally, just trying to be all these things for this person. And what I realized was, this is not what I signed up for. I need to help her get a case manager. That's what I need to do. That's my role in this, helping set her up with a case manager who does do these type of roles. And my role is just to be a light support and be there when she needs somebody to talk to or meet with her for more day-to-day, more emotional type things, not necessarily all these practical things. So that's a personal example I had that maybe some of you guys can relate to too. Just kind of knowing, what did I sign up for? What did I not sign up for? And maintaining boundaries within that.
Hali, thank you so much for that story. This is great. A tremendous example. And I have to say, part of my goal for even offering this workshop today is that I've met many, many good-hearted volunteers who've offered to serve. And without that clarity, 6 months later, they get used up and they quit and they never volunteer again because they're burned out. And so part of my hope today in wanting to talk about boundaries is that as you have clear definition of what you can do or what you need to connect somebody to, that a person would be able to be a long-term volunteer with long-term relationships, helping people make this reentry adjustment. And so you've really highlighted, what I'm looking for in this. Let's dive into a few more stories, because the stories often really help us understand and see different boundary issues. And keeping in mind, we're looking for clarity, we're avoiding confusion, we're building hope and defining a role. So those are some of the things we're doing. Know your limitations. Yes, thank you for this note. And we, those of us, in the faith community, we're aware of this, statement of Paul about being all things to all men. That doesn't mean we have to do every single role. It means that when I lived in Brazil, I needed to learn Portuguese and learn how to adapt in the Brazilian culture. But even there, I can't do everything. Even here, I can't do everything. And it's beneficial to me and to others. Draw more people in the whole community, connect people with the community. Well, let's tell a few stories. Thanks for starting us.
Oh, we have one. Jay Walker.
Oh. Let's ask Jay Walker to put your comment in the chat so we can read that.
Oh, I was going to give a story. I thought you wanted a story. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead and give us a quick story.
So I wanted to tell everybody I work for Goodwill Industries of Akron. We cover 5 counties. I also teach in the prison. I organize and facilitate the Citizen Circle, etc. There's a lot, but reentry is my passion. But the story I want to share is a story of a young man who came to me who had not only a cognitive disability, but a physical disability. He also had a record in 2 different counties. He had lived on the street since he was 8 years old. So he was the most amazing gentleman. He was determined to change his life. He was determined that he wanted to do everything. He needed a job, he needed a home, he needed an apartment, he needed everything. He wanted to go to college, etc. The first thing we did, you were talking about case management. That was the first thing we did. We got him a case manager. The second thing that we did is we got him into the citizen circle. We assisted him, and through the coalition, we began to see if we could get his felonies expunged. He had felonies in 2 counties. So through the coalition, we were able to assist with that, as well as the case manager. This is really a cool story. So what happened was we met, he had bench warrants out for him. We spoke with his parole officer, and in the county that he had the bench warrants was Toledo, even though he's living in Richland. So the case manager and I worked together on the expungement, and we met with the parole officer, etc. We were able to get a hearing with the judge. At the hearing, I had written a success story for him. His parole officer asked if he could use that. He went before the judge. Again, the coalition was able to pay those fines that were outstanding, which was amazing. And he had his trial, or his hearing, not a trial, his hearing about 2 weeks ago. The judge was so impressed with him. There were a couple of things that had been dismissed, but there were also a couple of other things that were not dismissed. And he said, you know what? He said, I am so impressed with everything you've done. You have employment, you have housing, you have support. That's the key word right there, support. You have all of this. I'm going to go ahead and clear this completely. So his everything has been expunged. He's free and clear. We are now working on the ones in Richland County. So I just wanted to say that with the support, I mean, when you look at all the amount of people that have worked to help this young man who had such a dire beginning, a hopeless beginning, and as a team, everybody that came together, from the citizen circle to the coalition to the case manager. He also was referred to Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. And so between them, I'm the one who not only worked with him in reentry, but also as a vocational specialist, was able to get his job. So I just wanted to say that there is absolutely nothing that can't be done if, again, the participant has to be willing, has to reach that point. And
Yes,
that's the
thank
emphasis
you.
of my story. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, as I listened to your story, and thank you for that, I heard about a judge, I heard about case managers, there's foster care, you know, there's different agencies involved. There's a whole community of people involved in that story. You know, and so part of what we're wanting to do is exactly connecting. So thank you for that. Let me share a couple other stories to help highlight some different boundary issues with those themes of clarity, confusion, and defining roles. Just a few weeks ago, I was working with somebody, a young man in the jail who was there for domestic violence. And as he was in the jail, we worked for a time, he was able to move from the common statement of, okay, I pushed her and she fell down, to I knocked her over. Thank you for being a little more clear about that. So finally, the sentencing day came, and he was very clear and satisfied that he could make a statement of ownership of all he had done, to make apologies to his own family, to the victim's family, and especially to the victim. He spoke very clearly, taking ownership. And so he was really clear about what his roles had been. But what he told me afterwards, number one, was that he was satisfied that he was able to acknowledge those things. But the second thing was that his former girlfriend, who was present in the court, was wearing a t-shirt that he had given her. And so he came away totally confused. So are we together? Are we not together? What does it mean? Confusion. So he's totally confused. So it was just a recent interesting example of just confusion. Let me share another story. I worked with a gentleman who spent about 4 or 5 months in a local CBCF. He gets out in the community, gets work. He's out there working. He's got a place to live. Things are going well. And about a month out, he calls me up. James, hey, what happened? Hey, what's up? I got in a big argument with the boss. Oh, do you still have a job? Well, I think so. Well, tell me what happened. Well, the boss said some things they shouldn't have said. Okay. Well, and I said some things I shouldn't have said. And so for the next several minutes, he just processed this whole confusing argument that he'd had with that boss. And he needed help to just bring some clarity. Okay, this overstepped the bounds. I shouldn't have said that. They shouldn't have said this, but I shouldn't have said that. And as he was processing, at one point he stopped and he said, last time I was this wound up, I relapsed. And then he paused. And so I asked, are you thinking about using again? He said, no, I'm not. I said, look, this is great. Look what you've done. You've identified what happened. You got wound up here. You connected with another human to be able to process this, a very confusing argument that you had there. And you had told me that you had gotten sober and you've been working that. That's important to you. Good job. Sometimes people need help to process their boundary experiences, violations, and so forth. And so I was really glad to be able to offer that role to help him process, because confusion's the enemy. Another time I was doing groups at North Central Correctional. Greetings to anybody up there in Marion. And I had been doing the Thinking for a Change groups and others. And I went in one day and the prison staff asked if I would meet with a young man there. He was young, he was angry, he was violent, constantly being sent to the hole, segregation, all those sorts of things. Would I talk to him? Sure. So we sat down and I talked with him in a little conference room like this. He knew that he was angry. He knew that he was violent. He's starting to tell his story. And then all of a sudden he says, what was so wrong with me? Excuse me? What was so wrong with me that my dad had to get rid of me? Yikes. Tell me about that. Dad sent me away. Where'd you go? I went to live with your grandparents. Was that a good place for you? Yeah, grandparents were great people. It was safe. It was healthy. They didn't use. It was great. Okay. Tell me about your dad. He was an addict. Oh, was he in treatment? No. Was he going to meetings? No. Sponsor? No. Was he trying to get sober? No, not at all. So what was so wrong with me that dad had to get rid of me? I said, wait a minute. It sounds to me like the one positive, loving thing your dad did was to put you in a safe place because he knew he wasn't safe. And I have to say, this young man just looked like the biggest startled response you ever see. His eyes just kind of got big and he got silent. He had never thought of it that way. He thought that he had been thrown out, discarded, gotten rid of, and to think that no, actually, that was the one loving thing your father did to take care of you. And so he needed the help of a conversation with somebody else to process what had happened. Here's another story. This story is from ORW. I used to lead a small team of people there working with high-risk offenders, all of whom had trauma. And so we were doing trauma groups and that sort of thing. And we were providing journals and notebooks and workbooks, all kinds of things for the women in that program. And one day I came in and the women in the group said, last night, one of the corrections officers went through our dorm and picked up our journals and read them out loud on the floor. These are all people who are trauma survivors. And these journals we had promised would be private and their own thoughts and help them process. This was terrible. So I immediately left to go speak with warden at the time, Ronnie Burke-Strasdale, who we just heard from earlier this morning. I have so much respect for her. She was amazing. My role in that case was to report. I went to her, and next thing I know, there's some closed door meeting with all the corrections officers. And I don't know what else she said. I don't know what else she did, but it never happened again. She took care of that real egregious boundary violation of somebody going through and reading those things on the floor to everybody. Never happened again. My job was to report. Her job was to resolve that situation. But now let me tell another story about a corrections officer. And this one's positive. Most of them are super positive. Every now and then you run into one, like I just mentioned. But recently I was preparing to meet an individual for the first time in a conference room like this. And one of the corrections officers approached me and said, James, hold up. This particular individual's going through a real hard time. He just randomly becomes violent and goes off. He's not in a good place. You should probably meet him in the attorney booth. You know, it has a little screen between. And I was just so grateful that the officer had the concern to come to me, because they have my back. I can't do my job without them, you know, looking out for me and giving me a heads up and warning and taking care of things. Work closely with the corrections staff. They're there to take care of us. They're there to prepare a place, an opportunity, safety for us. And so we want to work really closely with them. Here's another story. In leading groups on recovery and domestic violence in the jail, I have one young man in the group who, whenever I ask a question, he says, I don't know, got no clue. And I know that he has sat through many groups. He's going through workbooks, he's journaling, he's writing, but why is it in group he always says, I don't know? When I know perfectly well, he's really come to some great conclusions. He's learning a lot. Why does he not feel safe in a group or a public setting? Well, it's because this is a young man who has experienced a lot of boundary violations, a lot of boundary trauma. He doesn't have the confidence to be able to put out an opinion. Here's a comment. Just because you're incarcerated doesn't mean you don't deserve basic human respect. Yes, thank you for that. Be allowed to have some boundaries. Not just allowed to, you need boundaries. That's part of the healing and the help that people need. Yeah, I really appreciate that. That was a great comment. Absolutely human respect, human dignity. And so our treating people with dignity, with respect, essential. Even respecting personal space, that's also part of human dignity. Calling people by name. So we look for ways to communicate respect and dignity. So for this particular young man who kept saying, I have no clue, I don't know, he actually did have a clue. He was learning a lot. A lot was going on with him, but the confidence had been drained out of him by many boundary violations and anger that he experienced growing up. We need to be able to create a safe place for people to be able to communicate, express their ideas. So I wound up telling him, dude, this is a great place for you to say something stupid, get it wrong, make a mistake. It's all good. You're safe here. Anything you want to put out there is good. So we need to create a safe space so that people can express themselves, and they might not even get it right the first or second or third time. That's okay. So we're helping people begin to connect, beginning to restore their boundaries, experience healing, and go forward. Speaking to that, I know many times when somebody gets out and a volunteer has come up and offered to help, great. But somebody who's had all sorts of boundary violations in their life, they may not even know how to ask a good question. They may not even know how to ask in a simple, straightforward way. And so sometimes they might resort to old ways of requesting help, which is to say guilt manipulation, accusation, anger, those sorts of things. Look past those things, push past those. This is what has become a useful habit for the individual during their time incarcerated and before. And so we look past those things. Part of that showing respect, we just had that comment in the chat. To me, part of showing respect is to acknowledge I am not seeing people at their best, but that is our hope for people, and hope for a tremendous successful reentry back into the community, and being able to work there. One of my concerns for volunteers is clarify your role. If your role is going to be transportation to take somebody to point A to point B and back, and not accepting transfer and going to all sorts of other stops along the way. So clarifying your role, bringing that clarity is the essential part. So we're not seeing people at their best. We want to bring about hope. We're not going into rescue mode where we're trying to do every possible need for that person, but helping them learn how to access help, ask for help, and so forth. And so we go hopefully. I'd like to kind of conclude this portion. I'll look for some more things on the chat, but I'd like to just summarize with a couple some comments. One is boundaries are good for everybody, not just for people who are justice involved.
Like 2 hours.
They especially need the clarity, of our healthy boundaries. Number one. Number two, let me remind for many of us listening, we are familiar with the Matthew 25 passage referred to as the least of these, where Jesus was referring to people who are hungry, thirsty, naked, sick, strangers, and in prison. And to the extent that, we have served these people, we've done it unto Christ. And I mention this because to me, it means I may not see a result, I might not get a thank you, and I'm okay with that because at least I feel like the Lord is honored by treating people well and with dignity. And then I would like to just mention one other quick little passage, a verse out of Scripture in Paul's letter to the Ephesians. Ephesians is such a wonderful little book. I'm going to say the first 3 chapters are all vertical about our relationship with God. Great. The second half I'm going to call very horizontal. It's about all our relationships with each other within the community of believers, the church. And in chapter 4, verse 28, it's just some very practical advice. It says, let them who steal no longer, but rather let them work with their hands, doing what is good, that they might have something to share with those who are in need. So let's break this down. Somebody who steals, that would be somebody who thinks, oh, I need your stuff more than you do. I'm desperate, I'm needy, you're stupid, you didn't lock the garage, whatever it might be. And so the passage talks about they stop stealing. Stopping is good. That describes them working. They're out in the community, they're working. Stopping is good, working is very good. But then it describes the person that they might have something to share with those who are in need. And so this person began as a self-focused taker, but now they're beginning to be aware of the needs of others, and they're sacrificially giving up their own things to serve another. This is wonderful. This is one of the best single verse descriptions of real transformation that we have. I love this verse. It's all about hope. People becoming a generous former thief. I love that. That's part of my hope. As I work with folks, I'm very glad for that little verse. And as we wrap up here, I want to check in the chat, see if we have any further comments. So as we look for that, clarity is your friend. Define relationships, define who you are, what you are doing. Confusion, that's what we're trying to avoid. And we're helping people solve their own confusion. Part of their healing will be learning how to bring clarity to their own boundaries, the violations that they've experienced in others. And so clarity is your friend. So please remember my little story about the generous thief. I kind of love that story. To me, it's just a very hope-building story. And as you serve in whatever role, clarify that role. And as you begin to look for boundaries, you'll find them everywhere. By the way, this little book by Cloud and Townsend doesn't talk about addiction, doesn't talk about recovery, but it's really helpful just to come to a deeper appreciation of boundaries. Every half-price bookstore and in all around, they have copies for like $8. Boundaries, very useful, very helpful.
We're going to take questions now.
Yes.
Okay. So if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat. I kind of had something to ask, maybe for some, if you wanted to talk maybe about some practical tips. I think people kind of lean one of two ways. In some ways, some people have a lot of boundaries with other people and they're kind of nervous to put down those boundaries and let people in, maybe especially working with certain populations or but also too, people that don't have any boundaries. So you're going in maybe a volunteer role and you don't really have boundaries and you're just kind of letting people in. So do you have any kind of practical tips for if you fall in either of those kind of categories?
These are great questions, Haley. And I think what you're doing illustrates a big part of the answer, and that is talk this over with somebody. Where you need boundaries, be open. I think we need walls where we need walls and gates where we need gates. And part of the gate thing to me would be the ability to receive input. I have run into some volunteers who have no gates. And so nobody can come to them and say, you need to be more careful here or more clear there, or, speak to other different boundary issues. And so define your role and define it in conversation with your team, the people you're working with, whoever you are a part of, review those. I know when I was first going to the CBCF out in Marysville, I was confused because I noticed some of your people shake hands, whereas in the prison, they never shake hands. And so I had lunch with Dave Irwin at the time. I said, tell me about this. Do you shake hands? Do you not shake hands? Do you talk about personal things? Do you not? And his comment was, if you shake hands with one, shake hands with everybody. No favorites. Communicate equal treatment to every single person, no favorites. And yes, we do hold back on some personal things because that's not necessary, and crosses that line. So with that, thank you. And we'll pause. And thank you, Nick, for facilitating and your help today.
No problem. So a couple of things I got from this just for the group, some takeaways. When we talk about the open and closing gates, which is obviously critical when you're talking about boundaries, but it seems as though life experiences is one of those defining factors as to which gates will open and which gates will close. So I think as individuals, as part of the community, even inside the prison facilities, we should be working to instill hope, even on some level, as Haley mentioned a little bit about mentoring and coaching individuals, encouraging them. We know it's not going to be a process that happens overnight. We do understand that individuals, it's going to take time for wounds to heal and for them to be able to open those gates and let more people in. But considering all those factors and overall, just in general, the hard decisions that a lot of individuals have to make with regard to how we interact with each other, I do have a couple questions, at least on my end, I'd like to pose to you. So when you talk about establishing boundaries, you mentioned the individual whose father had to send him away because it was a hard decision, although it was in the end a beneficial decision. In your experience, and this is for both of you, would you argue that a more passive or more aggressive approach to that is better as far as establishing those boundaries? Does that make sense? So when you sit down and you establish boundaries for individuals, is it more of rip the Band-Aid off and just establish those boundaries, or do you need to be more gradual with that in your experience?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it is important kind of figuring out the person, kind of what they lean to, because I think some people kind of tend towards more not having boundaries. They've never really learned boundaries, or maybe they get their needs met by violating other people's boundaries. So I think in that case, if someone isn't really self-aware, they're probably not going to pick up on these subtle clues or these kind of things you're saying. You might have to be really direct with someone that really has no concept of what a boundary is. They don't realize that they're violating your boundaries, and sitting someone down and saying, hey, like, I just want you to know this is what's happening. This is how it affects me. Or somebody else who may be very independent, doesn't ask for help. And when they do ask for help, you can kind of be more confident. Okay, if this person's asking me for a bus pass or whatever it may be, I'm kind of confident that they actually need this help, and I can kind of trust that. More so with the other person, they might be asking for a bus pass, but then, you see them spend money in all these ways, and you're like, hey, I thought you don't have enough money for a bus pass, and now you're asking for all these other things. So kind of with the person that kind of leans more towards independence and doesn't ask for help for a lot, you may be able to be more subtle, or be more not have to sit somebody down and have such direct conversations. So that's kind of my thoughts about that, is kind of being aware of kind of what somebody's tendencies are and kind of what they lean towards. That probably is going to depend on how you handle that situation, how you communicate these things.
Thank you. Good answer. I think Hali's answer is really all about reading that person, that moment, that situation. So I think that's a great answer. I personally find that starting out with my little coach and mechanic story and other things to define right up front what the role is also allows me to refer back and say, remember when we had that mechanic and coach thing? Well, it sounds like you're drifting into, you want me to fix everything and be the mechanic. And we already talked about that's not what I do. And then I can refer back to that. I don't have to be angry. I don't have to be aggressive. I have to be clear. And so I think that particularly for people who have boundary injuries, they will often need some extra definition about why we can or can't do something, and speak to that. I had somebody one time at North Central who was very anxious and scared about getting out, and said, what do I have to do to get some help around here? Do I have to take my gate pay and buy a gun? Stop, halt. We're done here today. I have to go write an incident report. I have to let, the security staff know, I just heard a reference to buying a gun. Now, he didn't threaten me. But some things that a person might say, you might have to just stop right then and there and say, you already have my attention. I'm already here trying to work with you and help and get you connected. You don't have to make threats when you're already getting some help. But if you do make threats, words mean something. And so we stop at that point. And so I don't have to be angry or hostile or yell or any of those sorts of things. I just have to be clear, we're done now. I have to go write this up. And of course, it never happened again. And, he was able to acknowledge his own anxiety, took him to say some things he didn't need to say. There is a place to be real clear in defining, what we can do, what we can't do. Okay, we're drifting here into entitlement or something else, and put a stop right there.
Great points. Thank you. So two quick more comments regarding it. We'll move over to the group to see if anybody has any questions. You touched a little bit on two things that stood out to me was more or less confidentiality. When you spoke about the lady at ORW whose journal was read aloud, the violation of that. I think that, I guess more of a comment, I think traditionally we think confidentiality, we think there has to be a piece of paper that somebody signed to authorize it. When in fact, that situation alone shows that that doesn't have a clear boundary. People violate that on a regular. And there's a different type of culture inside the prison system that you can't really put down on paper. It's an experience. It's something that is hard to communicate to individuals who have not been in there doing the work that you do, or obviously been in that environment. So I would ask them to, the second point, which is hope, which is actually one of our director's core values that she has put out in the last couple of years. There's 4 of them, but most notably is hope is job one. And individuals like yourself having these conversations, being part of these community collaborations, for lack of better terms, and then bringing that communication back into the facilities with the work that you guys have been doing, definitely is right along those lines of instilling hope. But one thing I would ask your advice on would be, inside the prison system, there is a breakdown between those that are incarcerated and the family that support them. And so what's interesting about that dynamic is we're in an age where communication is so quick. You know, you can send a text within seconds and get a response. However, when you're inside the prison system and you're communicating with your family, you can't do that. So one thing that I would ask, again, your advice on is, when there's a breakdown in communication between you outside the community and your loved one, what are some avenues or methods in which you could communicate with your family, maybe through staff or through volunteers like yourself, if that makes sense? Some ways that you can help get that love and that support and all those factors that you need, that you can't regularly provide when you're living under the same roof. Does that make sense?
That's a good question. Yeah, that does make sense. You know, I think there's 2 parts to a response to that. One is, you know, making sure people know how to communicate, you know, using JPay or the, you know, the different email systems or letter writing or that sort of thing. So there's the functional part of how, but then there's on a personal level, what is it that the person is going to communicate? I was working with somebody at Pickaway Correctional many years ago. He had about 3 months before he got out. He was part of a reentry group, and he was very angry with his sister. She has to pick me up. No, she doesn't. She has to give me a ride. No, she doesn't. She has to give me a place to stay. She's all I got. No, she doesn't have to do anything. And I knew that the relationship was already very broken and needed mending. And I suggested, instead of you writing her and calling her and getting messages to her, you have to do this, you have to do that. Why don't you write a letter of just iMessages, where you just acknowledge your role in the broken relationship? Don't tell her anything. And I have to tell you that when I left that day, I was not convinced he was going to do it. But about a week later, I got a phone call from sister. And she says, "Is this for real?" What? She says, "I got a letter here. I've never seen a letter like this before." Oh, tell me about the letter. And she went through, and sure enough, he had done that. He owned his own part of the broken relationship. And that ownership that he put on paper was enough for the 2 of them to start talking and begin to mend fences, and him owning his stuff. And that was enough so that she decided to pick him up and put him on her sofa for a time until he got on his feet. So in response to a great question, you know, I think there's the technical side of how to write a letter, how to use the tablets, how to do that kind of stuff. But then there's the more heart part of what is it you want to say. And I've often encouraged people, write down what you want to say, you know, even in a phone call, you know, because sometimes the phone calls are rushed and people get frustrated because they don't get to communicate everything that's really on their heart. And think about, can you take ownership? Can you use some iMessages? Put aside the accusation, you know, all those other sorts of things. And then the other part of communication that I think about is is to remind that you're getting very few letters or visits or anything back. You can't necessarily interpret that they've left, that they're gone. You really don't know what it means. I appreciate the stress, the frustration, the anxiety of that, but at this moment in time, you don't have enough to know what it means. Some people are really hesitant to bring young children to visit in the prison. I understand that. That doesn't mean a lack of love or connection. They're just not sure they want to bring little kids in. There's an argument both ways for that. So sometimes helping the person still incarcerated to know how to think about, how to process what communication they are getting, sometimes is a real important part of that.
That's great, great. And I'll just, one last comment that I will throw in regarding that is, writing a letter is an old process that people don't really use anymore. And what's interesting is, having worked inside the facilities, when an individual gets a piece of mail that's not a court document or a child support order, but they get a letter from a family member or a birthday card, it means a lot. So when you pass that mail out and you see that response, it's interesting. So, all right, well, I do want to thank everybody for attending. I do want to remind you that we do break for lunch, but there is a lunch session. It's called "You Can't Heal with What You Hide" with Chaplain Dr. Sylvia Mosley. I do want to open it up to the group for the last few minutes, and I'll stay on for an extra 5 or 10 minutes to see if anybody's got any questions for Hali or James. And I do want to thank everybody for attending and appreciate Hali and James' time and sharing what they've done. So we will open the chat, and if anybody's got any questions, you can pop in the chat, or you can enable your video and go ahead and ask.
Great. Nick, while we're giving people opportunity to speak up or write a chat on that issue of safety and journaling and that sort of thing, I'm always encouraging people to journal, to write, and that whole self-discovery thing. And I know for a while, a number of times I've met men who did not feel like their lock boxes were safe, their property was safe. And so instead of journaling, they would write letters home to themselves. They would essentially do a journal and mail it home. And that was their way to feel safe. And I see somebody commenting on the part of the hope letters.
Yeah.
And boy, those are so valuable. People hang on to those. They share those. They read them over and over and over again. And I see Sandy, of course you're on there about the hope letters. I think it's wonderful. You're doing that. These are valuable.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's important too, again, as we're looking for messages in the chat, you had mentioned earlier about the collaborative efforts, the ability to step back from your role, whatever it may be, whether you're a resource provider, you're a family member, you're a mentor, and understanding that the efforts, again, are collaborative, being able to know your limitations and reach out to others for that support. I know Hali mentioned the mentor situation with her, knowing that what the individual needed, the boundaries that she was establishing, she wasn't able to necessarily provide the services and being able to connect. So that was, I think that's another great point with regard to the entire session that we've held here. So again, thank you for that. A few more comments. So just because they don't write back doesn't mean that they don't reassure the letter or don't treasure the letters. And again, that's a very, very valid point. I can tell you, again, having worked in facilities, individuals do value those letters that come in, their mail. There's a lot of things, there's an understanding amongst the staff of the institution that when we conduct what's called a shakedown or search, there are things that are valuable to them that we are much more cautious handling than in the past. So, and that would be things of that, letters, pictures, and things of that nature. So those things that you can't necessarily replace.
The question there about how to get involved in the hope letters. Actually, the Building Bridges of Opportunity, REBA and the whole RELINK, they have done a wonderful job of promoting and helping people getting involved in the hope letters. So I would suggest go to their website or even send an email to Reba. And I know that she would be delighted to put you in touch with some folks that help churches, help groups of people, help individuals get set up. Yes.
Great. And Sandy added some comments there on that
Yeah.
for us. Great.
Yeah. And yeah, people really treasure those letters. And even that, is a hope building exercise that somebody thought it important to write. Yeah. Good.
So one unique thing that does happen, just to fill people in, is around Christmas time, some local churches will actually come in and pass out handwritten Christmas cards or any type of religious-based card to the population. And it's usually 5, 10, 15 at a time to each individual, so they have something to read and look at, those of them that don't get things regularly. So another great way to reach out. Great. Hope letter writing has a lot of boundary clarity. Great. Great
Mhm.
point.
Yes. And the advantage of writing letters in conjunction with like this hope part of the ministry is that can give you a little bit of orientation about information about you that you would include or not include. And that's important. And so I recommend working through hope letter writing as opposed to just individually on your own. But go through that whole process because they've done it a lot before. They have a lot of good guidance about what to include, what to say, what kind of messages, and also things that you want to leave out.
Great.
Good.
All right. Well, that brings us to 11:50. We're a few minutes over. I do want to thank again all the participants that came in and provided comments and questions. Of course, thank you to Haley and James for their presentation. Really, again, for me, having been inside the facility and working in reentry, really great points for me in the work that I do and the work that I collaborate with others. So hopefully everybody gets to take advantage of some additional sessions throughout the day, and hope everybody has a great Wednesday. Thanks again, Haley and James.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Nick.